Good Saturday morning. It is March 29th, 2025. And something that we're looking to integrate into my Substack is a little more video. So, wanted to do a quick hit on this Saturday morning. Hope you're staying warm. A preview of tomorrow night. We have a live event that's going to be going. The Hillsborough County Democratic Committee will be hosting it. It's obviously open to anybody who wants to register for this free live event. The name of it, The Three Steps to Rebuilding the Democratic Brand. It's going to start at 7 o'clock tomorrow night. That's Sunday evening, March 30th. There are a couple ways you can register. One is you can go to my Political Action Committee's website. That's movethegoalpost.nh.com/upcoming events. You can look for the tab for upcoming events, and you'll see the link for this. You can register there. You can also go right into my Substack, which I would encourage you to do. Please subscribe while you're there. It's free, although also there's a paid option. We'll have some great paid subscriber benefits to unroll during the month of April. And you can see on my latest presentation, my latest piece on Substack at stevemarchand.com, and you can register for the event there as well. Very quick preview to give you an idea. Look, here's the issue. For the last several months, I've been going around the state talking to groups, at this point, thousands of Democratic activists, and I would ask attendees what they think the New Hampshire Democratic brand is. And time after time, it would be crickets. It would be silence, sometimes for 5, 10 seconds. I would let the silence hold, and that would make the point. It's going to be very difficult to know what our brand is, though, until we know what our principles are as a party at the state, at the federal level. And that put the light bulb on for me that really we need to spend more time understanding what our principles should be. And I have this slide. We'll go through this in depth tomorrow night, but increasingly it's kind of a thought exercise that we need to get down pat, asking fundamental questions. Why are you a Democrat? And when are times that you feel like you personally have made a difference, particularly in the civic or political space? You'll see the kind of questions you can hold on this slide and look at that. And then who is our target audience? And only then can we talk about what our brand is. If you were selling a consumer product, you would have to know what your principles, what your values were. And then you'd have to figure out what audience you were trying to sell or to connect with. Democrats are not a majority party right now. We used to be. We're not right now. And we have to figure out what audiences we have lost that we need to get back. And that is one thing that we do have a pretty good idea about. In fact, we'll spend some time tomorrow night going through this. If you look here, it's become increasingly clear. This is a chart that we'll get into tomorrow night. The biggest difference between how the towns that voted Democrat for Kamala Harris, but then voted for Kelly Ayotte, who are these um, federal Democrat, state Republican type voters. And as we'll get into up here in the upper right corner, it becomes pretty clear. It is these wealthier suburbs, high information, high education, high income suburbs that are increasingly showing the biggest gap between how they vote in federal elections for Congress and US Senate and president and how they vote at the gubernatorial and then down ballot state level. And it's a real problem. So that's one audience that is unique to New Hampshire. No other state in the country has this magnitude of a split between federal and state feelings about our Democratic brand. And we're going to need to get a lot of that back in order to be able to compete and consistently win in state level elections. But down in the bottom lower corner, lower left corner, totally different national problem. And it's this thing that we've talked about before. We're going to do again tomorrow night, a totally separate audience of voters who are less engaged in politics. They're also less ideological, and they now lean heavily towards the GOP. This was from before the Biden debate debacle. This was from late May of last year when I started showing this at presentations around the state. You could see the more involved you were in politics, you vote in primaries, you vote in off year elections. Democrats, and in this case, Joe Biden, were ahead of the Republicans and Donald Trump. But as you began to dig in and find people that didn't vote very often, they didn't vote in midterms or primaries or special elections, maybe not even in the last presidential. If they did show up last fall, they were heavily favoring Donald Trump and the Republican ticket. New Hampshire Republicans invested a lot of money, it turns out, uh, connecting with about 80,000 of these type of voters in New Hampshire. They were successful in doing it. And it's a big part of the reason why election eve polls showed about 6 points better Democratic performance for both governor and president that ended up happening. And most of that 6 points, it appears, were people that were not getting screened as likely voters in any of these pre election polls, but indeed showed up. And when they did, they were heavily for Republicans. And when we dig in about who these kind of voters are, these are folks that did not see the economy as doing well. The people that were most likely to vote and participate were also most likely to be Democrats, most likely to think the economy was doing well because they were most likely to be higher income, higher education, folks that were a little more immune from $7 a dozen egg type prices. And you can see the big difference there. And also, folks that were in this lower engagement that ended up being dominant for Republicans didn't think abortion or democracy, or for that matter, climate or LGBTQ issues were among their top issues. But for folks in this very tight top cohort, the kind of folks that often are showing up at my events, those were the issues they thought were at the top of mind. It turns out the economy, cost of living, immigration, these were the issues that about 3 out of 4 voters felt like were the biggest priority. We'll talk a little bit about Yana Krupnikov, who I'm hoping to bring up later this year to New Hampshire. She did a study several years ago and found that there was a greater division between high engagement Democrats and low engagement Democrats than there were between low engagement Democrats and Republicans. And that's part of why lower engagement Democrats were so open to Donald Trump's message. This has not changed so far this year. You've probably read stories all about it. Most Americans say that their perception of the difference of priorities between the two major parties, well, one matches a lot more closely with how they describe their own priorities than than the other. And I would argue that healthcare is one place where Democrats have a real opportunity because it's a high importance issue for the American people that they think we're better at. Here's one final chart that has gotten a lot of people to kind of gasp. David Shore, the data uh, researcher in politics, he released this chart a few weeks ago that basically showed the upper right corner are issues that they trust Democrats on more than Republicans and that they think are really important issues. When you go left to right, it's importance of issue. When you go up to the top, it's where Democrats have the trust advantage. When you go to the bottom, that's where Republicans have the trust advantage. And you can see up here in the top right corner, the challenge, the only issue that we have the advantage that voters think is really important is healthcare, mental health, healthcare, Medicare. You get down to important issues where Republicans have the trust advantage: cost of living, the economy, foreign policy, the deficit, taxes, inflation, crime, even political division, education, Social Security, civil liberties, drug abuse and addiction, immigration. So we have a lot of work to do because we need to earn back the trust of voters on the issues that matter most to them. And then up here in the upper left corner are issues where the voters trust us. They think we're better on the issue. They just don't prioritize the issue right now. And that's the environment, climate, abortion, childcare, race relations, and way up here in the upper left corner, LGBTQ issues, which have become a hot point. The Republicans are exploiting this massive outlier issue on this chart. It is a dominant issue of importance for high engagement Democratic activists, but it is the lowest out of these 35 issues on the chart in terms of importance for the overall electorate. They do trust us the most on it. They associate us Democrats the most with that issue. And we need to have a real reckoning about how to better communicate and play offense on the issue rather than the defensive position that at both the federal and state level we seem to be dealing with right now. It's an important issue, and we need to think through how to turn this into a place where we can play offense rather than a constant defensive position. This is going to be tomorrow night. It's going to be at 7 p.m. I'll scroll back here. Again, we have a lot of RSVPs already, and you can register in either of these ways. Probably the easier way is stevemarchand.com. That's my Substack. Please go on, check out my latest story. You'll find the way to register there. You'll be able to read a little more about these three big questions that we are going to start going through. Tomorrow night is not the end of the road, it is the beginning of the road. And I hope that you will join us at the beginning of the road. Thanks so much. Have a great weekend.